Endless Empowerment Summit, where we are unlocking the true potential within to reveal your best self. I'm your host, Shelley, and I have the honor, the privilege, the pleasure to announce today's guest speaker. I know you're going to love today's talk. I'd like to introduce you to Jessaca Lemon. Jessica, thanks for joining us today.
Yes, thank you for inviting me. I'm very excited to be here.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you here as well. We're going to have a great talk. We're going to have a great time. So Jessica, I'll just hand it over to you for an introduction.
Okay, so I am Jessica Lemon, and I am a registered nurse and a professional life coach. And I love working with people on relationships. So I work with couples, I work with parent-child relationships, even singles who are looking for a great relationship. Love to connect people and love what I do.
Sounds great. So Jessica, I know that in your line of work, you talk about, what it comes from to come from. When I say what it comes from, how important it is to have that validation and all that kind of great stuff that we're looking for, instead of looking for it on the outside, how important it is to find it within ourselves.
Yes, that is where it starts. So a prerequisite to all healthy relationships is to have self-love first. If you don't have that inside you, then there's no way that you're able to give that. And I like how Wayne Dyer said it in an analogy. And he said that if you wanted to give your neighbor a dozen oranges, you would have to have 12 oranges to give your neighbor. If you don't have 12 oranges, no matter how bad you want to give them to your neighbor, you can't. And the same is true of us. If we don't have that love inside us for us, then there's no way we can give that to another or accept it from another. So it all starts within.
Absolutely. And you're talking about in your line of work how you have different sorts of, relationships with another person, whether it be, a husband, wife, or it could be with a child or with an employer. And you're talking to you about, accepting us, accepting ourselves, even the parts we don't like, and that sort of thing. I would love for you to explain that more.
I would love to. So there are some myths or some false beliefs that a lot of us have, and I want to nip those in the bud first before we get started. One of those is that we have to like everything about ourselves in order to love ourselves. And if you think about that, you may think that's true when you do that, when you start trying to love yourself. But if you look at the people you love in your life, you don't tend to like everything about them. Your child who makes a big mess in their room all the time and is very messy, you probably don't like that about your child, but you still love your child. And we sometimes hold ourselves to these perfect expectations where we have to be these perfect people in order to love ourselves. And if we do that, then we're just never going to be able to find that self-love. So first of all, you want to nip that in the bud. You don't have to like everything about yourself to love yourself. Another thing is that a lot of people think that love just happens. You fall into love, you fall out of love. And that also is a false belief or a myth, because love takes work and it takes conscious effort. It's a choice. And every day it's a choice to love a person or ourselves. And the more sacrifice we give to a person, the more we tend to love them. So if we're looking at self-love, we would want to sacrifice for ourselves. And you may want to think about that for a minute. What would that look like? But for example, if you were somebody who tends to say yes to everyone else, that's self-sacrificing for others. In order to sacrifice for yourself, you may have to say no to others to say yes to you. And it's just going to be things like that that are just going to help build that love for ourselves. I like to look at a very, simple relationship, first of all, to paint a picture of what this looks like. So to think of a mother and a baby relationship and how that relationship grows. And it starts out that baby is completely dependent on that mom, and that mom takes care of its needs. When the baby's hungry, the mom feeds it. When the baby's diaper is soiled, the mother changes it. And that just builds trust over time that the mother is going to be there for it, and that the mother loves it, and that can become a mutual love. As it grows, the mother's there for the baby when the baby gets hurt or needs comfort. And we can actually do these things for ourselves. And so if you are thinking, I really could use some more self-love, and I'll give you a little exercise to see if you are somebody who needs to work on self-love, you can start out small by just taking care of your simple basic needs. When you're hungry, feed yourself. When you're tired, let yourself get a good night's sleep. Instead of doing some type of mind-numbing activity that's going to prevent you from getting the sleep that you need. Maybe exercising, because that's taking care of yourself. Like I said before, saying no to somebody else, you can say yes to yourself. Doing something today for your future self is also showing self-love. We do that as mothers. We do that for our children all the time, where we will do things not just for the now, but also because we care about that person so much that we want them to have a bright future. Well, doing that for ourselves is also going to build a lot of trust in ourselves as well. So if you guys want to see if you need a little more self-love, I like to do a little exercise where I have people, picture themselves, and maybe even actually do this, where you go into a room by yourself and you get rid of all distractions, TV, phones, music, everything, and just sit with yourself and see how you feel. See if you're comfortable in that place by yourself. Because if you think about it, from the time you were born to the time you die, the person you're with the most is yourself. And if you don't like that company, then it's not going to be a very pleasant life. So the sooner we can get to this place where we have this self-love, the more joy and happiness we'll find all the time in every moment of every day. And another interesting thing is that we are all the common denominator in all of our relationships is us. So when we improve ourselves, when we improve our self-love, we automatically improve all of the relationships around us. So it's something that we have, 100% control over. We don't have 100% control over other people, but we do ourselves. And so it's kind of fun that we can choose this self-love, and it's a choice, like I said before, and that just by choosing this self-love, our lives can improve drastically. And so there's a few things I wanted to talk about of how to get into this self-love. One I already talked about is building trust in ourselves by taking care of ourselves. Another is to really work on our fears that get in the way of this self-love. And I'm a certified Clarity Point coach. And in that program, we talk about two very core fears that almost everyone experiences in their life. Most people experience one more than another. But the first is that we're not good enough. And everybody at some point in their life has probably felt like they're not good enough. And this is a very sneaky relationship saboteur, especially when it comes to our relationship with ourselves. It can sabotage so much in our lives. So a lot of times this idea comes from beliefs that we've adopted through life. We come without any fears. We're born without fears and we learn them. So maybe something happened that taught us that we weren't good enough. So we want to go back and change that limiting belief to a belief that's going to serve us. And the one that's going to serve us more is that our value is infinite and absolute. Now it's tricky because a lot of the messages we receive are that our value is very, very dependent on the things that we do. If we perform well, if we look good, if we have nice possessions, and if people like us. So a lot of times that's what we think determines our value, and that our value can go up and down. And that's a scary place to be, to think that you can so easily lose your value. But if you change that belief to that your value is infinite and absolute, and because of that, you can love yourself no matter what. It doesn't matter what you look like, what you own, how well you perform, or how much people like you, that you have this infinite value. And then the other core fear is that our life is not good enough. And that usually happens because we get these ideas or these outcomes set in our mind of what our life has to look like. And if it does not look like that, then we must have, did something wrong, or somebody did something wrong to us and become a victim. And that is another saboteur. of our personal relationship with ourselves and with others as well. So that is also a limiting belief that our life isn't good enough. And the belief that I like to teach people is that our life is here to serve us. That life isn't happening against us, but it's happening for us. And no matter what the situation may be, that we can grow from that situation. And that can be tough because there's some really tough situations people are in. But we actually learned this from Viktor Frankl, if you guys know who that is. He was in a concentration camp, and he talked about just changing his mindset to more of a growth mindset instead of a victim mindset. And it made all the difference. And he helped a lot of people get through that experience and heal from it by changing to a growth mindset. So when we, adopt that growth mindset instead of that victim mindset, it can help us get out of those fears. So those are two fears that really sabotage our relationships with ourselves and others. Once we get into this place where we can love ourselves because we've built trust in ourselves, we've decided that we don't have to like everything about ourselves to love ourselves, and it's okay. And we've gotten out of these fears, and we know that we're good enough, that our value is infinite and absolute, and that our life is serving us, then we can really start to look at ourselves completely, to really dive in and think, okay, what are my strengths and what are my weaknesses? And if you get to this place where you love yourself, it's okay to look at your weaknesses because it's not as painful. If you don't love yourself, and I found this many times talking and working with people, is if they don't love themselves, they will never look at their weaknesses because it's too painful. They can't do it. So you have to be in that place where you can look at that. And it's not to beat ourselves up. We don't want to look at these weaknesses because we want to say, oh, I'm a terrible person or anything like that. It's because everyone has weaknesses. And if you're not aware of them, then you don't set up boundaries to protect yourself. And then you're not doing the work to change those weaknesses into strengths. So the founder of Clarity Point Coaching, she co-founded a personality test that has been really helpful. And it helps us determine where our core fears are, and then also where our natural energy tends to travel to. And there's 4 different areas where our natural energy might travel to. And one is to people, one is to tasks or getting things done. Another is to ideas or the most ideal way of doing things. And then the last is to things or tangible items. And if I were to ask anyone, all of them with their conscious mind would say people are the most important, or most people would say people are the most important out of those 4 things. And that is very true, but not everyone has their natural energy or their subconscious energy that travels to that. So let me give you an example. If there is a parent who may be more task oriented or getting things done oriented, if their child comes up to them and they're in the middle of a task and their subconscious energy is going to this task, they may not even notice that their child has come up and talked to them, And so it doesn't mean that they don't value that child or that person. It's just that their natural energy travels to that area. And you may want to think about for a minute where you think your energies may travel. And usually it's kind of like a pie graph, and you can break it up and say, okay, most of my energy goes to people. This much of it goes to tasks. This much goes to things. This much sorry, I just went blank, to things, and then to ideas. And then you can kind of understand yourself a little bit better. And when you understand that, then it can help us see what our strengths might be so we can capitalize on those strengths. And then our weaknesses, so we can set up boundaries to protect ourselves and then work on those weaknesses to make them strengths. So I'm going to go into a little bit. I have a little bit of time, and I want to go into each one real quick and kind of give you an idea of what the strengths and weaknesses may look like. And then if you guys want more information on this, please reach out to me because I would love to help anyone who wants to know more about themselves. So if somebody has high people energy, of course, their strength would be that they're very good at connecting with people. They have great connections and they care so much about people. And it's just very natural energy, subconscious energy that goes to this all the time. But with that comes the weakness of they may become people pleasers and have a hard time with setting up boundaries. They may be peacemakers to the point that they avoid contention and they don't talk about hard conversations because they don't like contention. And some of those things can present some problems in their life. So if they know this and they're in a place where they can accept it and not like themselves because of it, then they can learn how to, not be so much of a people pleaser, learn how to say no to others to say yes to them. They can learn how to set up boundaries so people don't overstep boundaries and walk all over them. And they can learn how to have conversations that they're comfortable with when they need to bring up tough topics. And then, so let's go into the high task energy. So getting things done. For those people, they are super ambitious. They accomplish so much in life. And so that's an amazing strength. But also what comes with that sometimes is that they can become workaholics and they can struggle with a good work-life balance. And so maybe for them, setting up boundaries to protect them so that they have time for themselves and for their relationships may be something that they might want to work on. Also, sometimes they tend to see their value is dependent on their performance. And so that can feel like their value is in question often, and that they have to perform in order to have their value be enough. And then high idea energy people, those are the people that have amazing ideas and they just think of the most amazing, perfect ways for things to be done. So they are great at inventing or coming up with systems that make things work well. And it's just this very, very natural energy to them. But sometimes a weakness, I'm not going to say that it's always true of all these people, but sometimes a weakness could be that they have very black and white thinking, very dogmatic thinking. Maybe their relative truths are absolute truths to them. So they have these unwritten rules that they hold other people to. And so sometimes it can push people away because they feel criticized instead of accepted. Sometimes they can be a little bit closed-minded. And like I said, it's not always true of these people, but it could be a weakness. And it's important to be able to be in a place where we can see our blind spots. Because what I found in relationships is the people that really struggle in relationships are those that aren't willing to look at their blind spots and work on them. They don't have self-love, first of all. So they're too scared to look at those blind spots. It's too painful. And then with the high things energy, this is people who are just love beauty. They love beauty on and around themselves, and it's just very natural for them. So they may be those interior designers, or there's people that are into fashion and things like that. And like I said before, when we know our strengths, we can capitalize on them. So maybe for a things person, going into those areas for work is what will best serve the world. And when we use our strengths to serve the world, it makes us feel so good, and it makes people around us feel so good. And that's just us being true to who we are. So we can also capitalize on these amazing strengths that we have. But a weakness with things people can be, I'm not saying it for sure is, but it can be that they may struggle with finances. Maybe because these things are so important to them, they don't budget super well sometimes, or they live paycheck to paycheck, or are in debt. And they also sometimes find their value comes through what they own and how they look. And so that can also be a weakness. But like I said, we want to start with self-love and understand we don't have to like everything about ourselves in order to love ourselves. And that it's not about attacking ourselves by looking at our weakness. It's about seeing our blind spots so that we can set up boundaries to protect ourselves and then work on those weaknesses to make them strengths. And then to see our strengths too. Some people even have a hard time seeing anything good in themselves, but they may be looking at themselves in the wrong way. They may be looking at, oh, I don't perform well enough. I don't do all this, instead of saying, oh, I have people energy. I connect with people so well, and see that as a strength and capitalize on that. So those are just a few things that may be helpful when looking for self-love and trying to create some self-love in us. And that's so key to having really great relationships. I hope all of you do the work to do that.
Oh, that was amazing. That was amazing, Jessica. This has been such an amazing interview. I know it's only been 20 minutes and flew by, as you can tell, but I'm sure everybody in the audience wants to know more about you and where we can find you. So where can we find you, Jessica?
Yes, so I have a page at claritypointcoaching.com/Jessica Lemon, and that's Jessica with an A, not an I. So you can find me there, and I have a YouTube channel where I have some free tips that you can go to and listen to that may be helpful. And then also, if you want to reach out to me at Coach Jessica, and that's with an A with the number 1 at gmail.com. I can also do a free 20-minute consult with you. We can talk about some of this stuff if you have more questions on anything. And would love to hear from anybody who's interested.
Well, wow, great interview, Jessica. Thanks so much for accepting my invitation to being a guest speaker today. It's been such a pleasure, such an honor having you on.
Thank you for inviting me, Shelley. This was great.
Thanks a lot. Well, thanks everybody for watching, and until the next time, take care, everybody. Bye-bye.